Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. This is Humi, and peace out to the rest of you. Black heart, black mind, black in again. Hit the share button because the message is more important than the messenger. Listen, this is about the two extremes, and I'm going to go in on them. And one example of the two extremes can be illustrated in this debate about the definition of a high-value man. Some of us have internalized white supremacy. But it's not those of us that have said Tom Brady is, as an example, it's not just those who would take a white rich man and say, here, he's high value, and then turn around and look at a black rich man and say, wait, how do you get that money? Now, if you do this for a white guy, if you do this for a black man, how did he get the money? You ask, you scrutinize, and you don't do it for a white guy, that is an internalization of white supremacy. Hands down. Certainly. But you see, on the flip side, there is the opposite extreme. And that opposite extreme says, ironically, you don't talk like them, you don't dress like them, you don't do anything that they would approve of at all, even if it's something that is good, even if it's something that would help us. You don't do that at all. That's also problematic. And I say that because unfortunately, there are things that whites do that would work for us if we did them for ourselves. There are things that other groups of people do that would work for us if we did them for ourselves. There are also things that all these groups have that don't make a goddamn bit of difference. Or they even hold them back to a certain extent. They just get away with them more. And that's where the difference comes in. We haven't sifted through what these things are yet. First off, what are the differences between us and other people in terms of what they actually do? Secondly, which things actually work for them and which things aren't really helping them out, and they're just getting away with them anyway. We haven't sifted through this. This is going to be another long conversation, and by the time we have that one, it'll be irrelevant. We talk about what the Chinese do. Most Chinese are broke, poorer even than African Americans. We just don't know that because we don't live in China. That's all that is. We think that because 1 million of them are involved in Africa and the recolonization of it, or the neo-colonization of it, that China's really got its shit together. First off, China's one country. Africa's 54 countries. And not all of them are bowing down to China. Secondly, 1 million is literally 1,000th of their population. And it's less than because they've got more, they're almost at 2 billion. They're somewhere halfway between 1 and 2 billion. So 1 million of them is even less now than 1,000th of their population. So that's the other thing. We don't factor in these things. We love to just talk about these other groups. Man, the Chinese and the Koreans, they will stunt and profile and owe mountains of debt to other people and will not tell you because they're all about image and face. Does that sound familiar? That's just like us. You go into a sweatshop in China, guess who's working that sweatshop in China? The Chinese. So we tend to make this mistake of thinking that all these other groups are doing everything they need to do and nothing bad is happening to them, and that we're doing nothing we need to do, and that's why all these bad things are happening to us. No, there are bad things that we're doing. But by the same token, we don't get away with anything bad that we do. Other groups get away with it. Hook, line, and sinker. They always get away with the dumb stuff. I shouldn't say always. They tend to get away with the dumb stuff they do, definitely more than we do. And the paler they are, the more they get away with it because white supremacy is internalized on an international scale. That's why. Somebody loans you money, they're coming after you much more quickly than they're going to start going after a Chinese person that owes them money. That's the difference. End of story every time. You're darker. And the person that does this may not even be aware of it. They may not be conscious of this discrepancy. It is a programming on the subconscious level. That is what the Matrix movies were about. People's subconscious biases and things they take for granted. There you go. And even Sophia Stewart fell victim to that, because now she's talking about, well, we not from Africa. We were always here in the Americas. Oh boy, what is with this anti-African strain of these folks? I know the history. Yeah, there were those of us in the Americas. Matter of fact, black people were the first ones in South America. We are not the first ones in North America. And we still came from Africa. And see, these are where you get into these extremes. And so somebody can argue an extreme, and when you argue the middle, they'll turn around and point at the opposite extreme as if that's what you're arguing when you're not. No. In order to avoid these extreme arguments, one of the things we're going to have to do is fuck the shuck up before we start speculating. Unless you admit, I'm just guessing, I'm just speculating, I don't have proof. And wait for weeks for more information to come out, verify the info, and then start saying, okay, this is the evidence to back up a speculation I had earlier, or it disproves it. Take, for instance, the death of Chadwick Boseman. Only TorontoToday.net, which only started this year and doesn't really even have links on their main page, has an article about Chadwick Boseman being poisoned as it turned up in an autopsy. That's the only one that has it. And they say Los Angeles is where the story broke. So the article apparently was written in a proper format, but when you go to TorontoToday.net and you click on it, you go to that link, you can't even find, when you go to that page, you can't find the link on the page to that article, and they just got started 2020. How many of you ever heard of the Toronto Today newspaper before? I'll wait. So you see, we have to be careful. Because the way that we just take any information, any screenshot, any meme, anything, and run with it has caused a lot of the needless nigger debates. And now we're debating about what even is the definition of a high-value man. I'll tell you this. You got to be stuck in the States to be, not even in the States, but you got to be stuck in the West to be sitting up there arguing over what even is the definition. With regard to work, the definition of a high-value man is defined by the other workers and the customers. We already know what that is. Is he skilled at what he's doing for a living? And if not skilled, does he have the potential to become skilled by listening and learning from those who are better skilled than he is? Does he have that? Okay. Got a high-value person on your hands. In terms of dating, is this person high value? And if so, is the opposite gender even functional enough to sit up here and be able to make this whole assessment? Obviously, in the West, a high value man with regards to women is a hard thing to assess because the women are broken, and we've already accepted that. And the women that are not broken as individuals are either rare or they're common, but they're indoors with the families. So we know that we can't really assess this. Where I live, you don't have to have this debate, not because it's not because they just have all their stuff together. It's simply because their women are not yet as broken as they are out there in the West where you are. That day's probably coming, though. Men here are beginning to get miserable. Having gotten married, owing tons of debt, and married to wives that don't even respect the fact that they owe tons of money because they paid the dowries to get married to these women in the first place. Imagine that. She wanted an expensive dowry. Her dad did too. You paid it. That means you had to borrow money. Now you owe a lot of money. You got to make massive payments every month to keep up. And because that's the dowry that she wanted, or her dad, or both of them wanted, and yet she's still demanding from you a certain lifestyle. I want a new piece of jewelry every 3 months, 4 new pieces a year. And I want a vacation every summer. And you're like, I got to pay 1,000 dirhams every month to keep up with this debt that I had to go into to marry your butt in the first place. That's what has to happen. That's what goes on here. It's increasing. But right now, as of yet, they're still not as broken as they are in the West. Because in the West, they will be freaks and whores and then turn around and make these same demands. And they can't even be faithful while you're married to them. Look at what Tony Braxton said. I wish I'd slept around more when I was 20. I wish I drank and smoked more. Ms. Braxton, I was 25, and I decided to become Muslim. I don't miss the drinking. I don't miss the smoking. As far as the whoring around, well, I didn't do that even when I wasn't Muslim. But if you wish you had done this stuff, Tony, then you've already nullified every good behavior in your life. You behaved well and you look back and you regretted it. It's not the men that are making you regret the fact that you didn't sleep around. It's the women. Men never turn to a woman and say, I wish you'd slept around. Unless, of course, he was trying to smash when he was younger, generally speaking. In most cases. But oftentimes the men aren't sitting up saying, looking at women that were, chased and say, I wish you'd slept around more back then. No, that's not it. No, it's either I wish you'd slept with me or nothing at all. We don't say anything about it. I'm just going to call it what it is. That is nigger business. And it's not something she got from men. So we are dealing with a real, honest to God, true scenario of these crazy extreme arguments because we don't just want to verify certain bits of information. And now with this arguing over the definition of a high value man, we got these two extremes and both of them have internalized white supremacy. Now how both of them internalized it? There is the more bougie argument, you could say, and we've already talked about, everybody has said how they've internalized it because it's bougie. We already associate bougie with whiteness anyway. And I guess you could, I don't know. But on the flip side, you got the cats with a little bit more of that niggerilla swagger. And they're making a different argument. They're pretty much saying if a white guy makes this much money, then a black man that makes this much money is also high value, in a nutshell. Now, on the surface, that is true. What they're also saying is, if you're not going to scrutinize how the white guy made his money, then you don't scrutinize how the black man made his money. I also say, again, that is true. That's fair. How did the people on that side, if they're that far extreme, how did they internalize it? Very simple. The niggerilla swagger in the first goddamn place. Because that is somebody else's stereotypical definition of black masculinity. It's not really masculinity, it's machismo. But that's what they're internalizing, the machismo. White folks stereotype a black male machismo with the niggerilla swagger. Because the word niggerilla is not even something that I should be able to use to coin an actual, something that actually exists. At least in the minds of the white supremacists and their stereotypes. But that white supremacist stereotype of the niggerilla is exactly what we have internalized. And don't get it wrong, I like gorillas. I mean, I'm the only black man it's okay to compare to a gorilla because I actually do act like one, and I look like one to a certain extent. So it's okay if you compare me, black mind, to a gorilla. That's fine. It's not okay when you compare black folks in general to non-human primates. That is some white supremacist BS. We have a right to be offended by that. But there are those of us that take that in mind and we think that that's what we should be like. Because that's what they think we're like. And that's why I'm using the term. If you take that, and as an example of this is somebody that's very woke, Sarah Sutton Seti. So-called woke, I mean. We don't come from ancient Kemet directly. We come indirectly through the Dogon. But the point I'm making is that he's on the ancient Kemet stuff and, pharaohs and oxen and I ain't got nothing to do with the Caucasian and all that. No, they actually do come from us. Yeah, these racial conflicts are a family affair, believe it or not. These Arabs are our grandkids. They're our descendants. And it was believed that white folks were theirs. And probably are. But anyway, he was on that. I mean, you take his whole style. Coming black at y'all again with this real talking falk. Go straight to shouting and cussing right off the bat. And he argues with everybody. And people get on panels, or they used to get on panels with him, and they would just say, well, he and I have a difference of opinion on X, Y, and he would interrupt them. Man, fuck the shuck up, old itch bass nigga. He was on that niggerilla shit. Doesn't matter what you conscious of at that point. That's how you treat people. We can't work with you. You on the porch monkey business. White folks stereotype of your machismo is true in your mind, so you make it true outwardly. That's what I'm talking about. Two extremes, each one internalizing white supremacy in different ways and getting into debates about how they internalize it. When we get rid of that mindset, we will learn that it is not only important to come to a right conclusion, but to come to a right conclusion for the right reasons based on the correct premises, because otherwise you just made a lucky guess, nigga. Another example is Chadwick Boseman. There are going to be those of us who are going to say, it was just colorectal cancer, that's all it is. End of story. You niggas always believe conspiracy theories, right off the bat. And on the flip side, they're going to be like, the opposite extreme is going to say, man, they always poisoning, black liberators. Chadwick Boseman did something. He did something that was psychologically important, especially for our kids, but Chadwick Boseman was not a liberator. He didn't claim to be. So there's going to be, these are two extreme arguments. Well, let's examine the facts and go down the middle. He is said to have died of colorectal cancer, but the autopsy's not yet been reported, at least that we know, or publicized. Now, TorontoToday.net is the only link to a story that says that he has been autopsied and determined to have been poisoned. But it only comes from TorontoToday.net. And when you go to that website, they don't even have a link to the article on it. There's just a screenshot on a YouTube page. That's it. So we can't verify it, you see? There's no objective verification that, he was found to have been poisoned. I said years ago, when Black Panther came out, they're going to go after the director and the stars. But I was expecting them to go after them in court to try to discredit them, not kill them. So what I'm saying is that we have every right to take something like this and say, I'm going to wait. And that's one thing black folk don't like to do, say, I'm going to wait and see more information. I'm going to see what evidence leads. We don't like to do that. We like to jump to conclusions. And you're gambling when you do it. And this is how we wind up being on opposite extremes. Each one of us throwing rocks at each other. Where do these rocks bounce off and fall eventually? In the middle. Well, we would have been better off starting off until we could see exactly where the road was. So, on one hand, this extreme bougie BS, we don't need it. This conservatism is unnecessary. It is an extreme. We can't afford it. We need black conservatism, not conservatism, and we don't need to be jumping on bandwagons and political parties that they offer up to us. Well, which one is it going to be? They offered us votes and neither one of them is really going to work. No, Donald Trump is not on our side. No, the Democrats aren't either. They gave you two poisons and told you to pick one, and we arguing over which poison to take. Are you niggas that stupid? Are you niggas really that dumb? Instead of us saying, okay, you know what? We're just going to have to work on repatriation because this is rigged. It's completely rigged. There are other places, other parts of the world to go to. And you know what? The Lebanese have done it. The ones that left Lebanon and got out, they've done it. They're a minority in so many places, but they're never a persecuted minority. Except, of course, maybe in some white countries. You do not find Lebanese in South America or in Africa being persecuted. At all. And you know what? They weren't afraid to leave Lebanon. They got it worse in Lebanon than they do elsewhere. And that's what we fail to understand. We don't even want to go back to the continent that we had to be ripped away from, and they're willing to give up the land that their parents stayed on willingly for millennia because a civil war broke out. And we are looking at a civil war that could break out in the United States at any moment, and where the game has always been rigged against us from the word go, and we don't want to go somewhere where we are actually from originally and try to readjust. Again, taking two extremes and ignoring the middle. The bougie conservative on one extreme and the niggerilla on the other. Now, I'm getting sick of both of you niggas, to be honest. I'm getting tired of it. The good thing is that most of the manosphere I don't find to be quite that extreme, but they're listening, or they're trying to pick and choose between them. That's where the issue comes in. Anyway, I got to go into work, start teaching these little lazy behind students. I got a class full of repeaters that already failed. So I got my work cut out for me. Next one maybe in a few days or so, inshallah. Thanks for listening. Black heart, black mind, blackout, assalamu alaikum, and black heterosexual middle of the road male power just because they don't like it.